I remember sitting in my living room at 75, noticing how quiet everything had become. Not the kind of quiet that comes after a busy day, or the soft stillness of a house while someone naps, but a deeper, heavier quiet that almost felt like I had melted into the walls. I had lived a full life, raising children, working, helping friends, being part of communities, but suddenly it felt as if all those threads had pulled away, leaving only me in an echoing space. There were no dramatic losses, no crises, no glaring events that explained it. It wasn't that I was lonely in the sense of lacking people around me. I was lonely because my presence no longer seemed to matter, because days passed without anyone needing me, seeking me, or waiting for me to show up. That realization didn't hit all at once. It crept in quietly, like the slow disappearance of sunlight through a foggy window. And yet, it was one of the most vivid feelings I've ever experienced, subtle, but undeniable, like a pulse of absence in the middle of life. My name is Calder Wynne. I'm 80 now, but back then at 75, this quietness felt like a shadow I couldn't shake. I hadn't anticipated that loneliness could feel so invisible, so unspoken, so intertwined with everyday life that it almost passes unnoticed until one day you realize it's been there all along. I began noticing the patterns, the days that blurred together, the conversations I didn't initiate, the moments where I felt peripheral, almost optional. And it wasn't just emotional, it began to affect how I moved through my own world. Even small choices, what to cook, whether to call a friend, when to leave the house, felt like tiny tests of whether my life still had purpose, and often I felt myself failing them. If any of this feels familiar, I want you to pause for a moment and truly acknowledge it. These quiet feelings are not a weakness. They are signals that something in your life has shifted, and recognizing them is the first step toward reclaiming presence, meaning, and even joy. That's why I want to encourage you, as I encourage myself every day, to take action in ways that honor your experience. And one of the most effective ways you can support yourself and this community is by liking this video, subscribing, and using the hype button. Each hype is more than just a click. It's a way for voices like ours, voices over 60, to rise, to be counted, to remind ourselves and others that presence, even quiet presence, matters. Right now, as you listen, give yourself permission to feel this moment fully. It's not just a pause in your day, it's the beginning of noticing the subtle truths that can shift everything. Loneliness after 70 isn't about being alone. It's not about empty rooms, quiet phones, or missing invitations. It's about losing relevance, about noticing that the world carries on without pausing for your presence. I had spent decades woven into life's fabric, raising children, working, mentoring, contributing to friends and community, and suddenly all of that structure vanished. Retirement removed the daily roles that had given me purpose. My adult children were fully engaged in their own lives, often more through screens than shared moments, and my friends were scattered or busy with their own obligations. Days began to blur into one another. Even when I tried to fill them with activities, volunteer work, or social events, nothing touched the emptiness at its core. Staying busy felt like pretending, like putting a plaster over a deeper wound. I realized then that I didn't feel lonely because I had no company. I felt lonely because nothing depended on me anymore. No deadlines, no expectations, no small urgencies that anchored my sense of being alive. The absence of significance left a subtle, persistent ache, one that made even ordinary decisions, what to cook, whether to make a phone call, when to leave the house, feel weighty and fraught. Recognizing this was uncomfortable, almost frightening, because it forced me to face a truth I had been avoiding. The world had shifted, and my sense of purpose had to shift with it, or I would fade quietly into irrelevance. It was in that moment of clarity that I asked myself a question I had long avoided: who am I now, when no one needs me? It was terrifying to confront. I had always defined myself by how I contributed, how others relied on me, and without those anchors, I felt untethered. Yet leaning into that question, instead of shying away, revealed something profound. It was the opening to 3 hard truths that would change everything, not simple advice or superficial tips, but deep, personal realizations that reshaped how I experienced every day. Each one built on the last, offering a path from quiet despair to grounded presence, from feeling peripheral to reclaiming a sense of self-worth and autonomy. These truths were not casual or optional. They were unavoidable, and they carried a subtle power that could transform how anyone over 60 perceives solitude, purpose, and their own relevance. The journey to discovering them began with facing that question honestly, and it is that journey I want to share with you now. Secret 1. No one is coming to restore your place. I remember the exact moment I understood the first hard truth that would reshape my life. No one is coming to restore your place. It wasn't a sudden epiphany with bright lights or dramatic music playing in my head. It was a quiet, insistent realization that settled into my bones. For years, I had believed, almost unconsciously, that someone, family, friends, institutions, the universe itself, would eventually notice that I had been quietly fading and step in. That someone would assign me a role, give me a reason to be relevant again, or at least make me feel seen. But the truth was undeniable. No one was coming. Waiting for that recognition, that invitation, or that acknowledgement was a slow kind of erosion, a daily reinforcement of invisibility. Every day I waited, I reinforced the lie that my significance depended on someone else deciding I mattered. And with every passing morning, the empty spaces in my life grew heavier, filled with the silent echo of expectation and disappointment. I realized that this waiting had been disguised as patience. I told myself I was being thoughtful, considerate, and wise, leaving room for others to act. In reality, I had been putting my life on hold, tethered to the hope that my value would be validated externally. It was exhausting. It was painful. And most of all, it was unnecessary. The freedom in acknowledging this truth, harsh as it felt, was profound. Understanding that no one would come to restore my place didn't make me bitter, it gave me agency. I could no longer sit in a passive role, waiting for someone else's timeline to define the importance of my own days. That awareness became a turning point, the first step toward reclaiming authority over my own life. Accepting this truth doesn't mean giving up, surrendering, or cutting yourself off from connection. It means recognizing that responsibility for your life, your joy, and your relevance rests squarely in your hands. It means understanding that your presence, your actions, and the ways you choose to engage with your own life are not contingent on external validation. It's an invitation to stop waiting for others to give your life meaning and to start intentionally creating that meaning yourself. For me, that meant noticing the small, overlooked ways I could assert relevance in my daily life. I began setting simple intentions for my days that were independent of anyone else's needs. Preparing a meal I wanted to enjoy, choosing to read a book that spoke to me rather than one that was socially recommended, taking solitary walks and observing the world around me with curiosity rather than expectation. Every small act became a statement. I mattered, not because someone else said so, but because I chose to inhabit my own life fully. The shift was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but with each day, I felt the quiet weight of invisibility lifting. The realization that no one was coming to restore my place transformed from a moment of despair into a profound sense of freedom. I had been waiting for a rescue that wasn't coming, and in that waiting, I had overlooked the most powerful rescuer of all, myself. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever found yourself waiting for someone to make you matter? Waiting for recognition, validation, or a role that only you can assign yourself? If so, take a moment to reflect on what it would feel like to stop waiting, to stop deferring your own significance to someone else's schedule, and to reclaim the authority you have over your own life. It's not an easy step. It takes courage to face the discomfort of self-reliance, to recognize that the absence of external validation is not a void but an opportunity. But it is also immensely liberating. By accepting this truth, you give yourself permission to create purpose, to define relevance, and to live with intention every single day, regardless of what the world around you does or doesn't do. In embracing this first secret, I learned a lesson that would ripple through every aspect of my life. The world will not assign you importance, but you can choose to assign it to yourself. Waiting silently only deepened the ache of loneliness, but acting consciously, deliberately, and self-responsibly created a quiet, steady sense of presence that no one could take away. The act of taking responsibility for your own life becomes, paradoxically, the first step toward connection, meaning, and fulfillment. This is not about isolation or stubborn independence. It is about standing firmly in the recognition that your life, right now, is yours to shape, yours to own, and yours to honor. Secret 2. Become the witness to your own life. For a long time, I didn't realize how much I had been living my life as if someone else was always watching, approving, or keeping track. Without that gaze, that sense of observation, life began to feel unreal, like a series of blurred images I wasn't fully part of. The meals I cooked, the books I read, even the hours I spent walking in my neighborhood felt hollow when no one noticed or commented. I had been conditioned to measure my significance through others' reactions, the smile of a friend, a child's acknowledgement, the quiet nod of approval from a colleague or neighbor. When those responses faded, the world seemed to lose its edges, as though I were existing inside a fog where every moment was unanchored and weightless. The days felt both long and empty, and I started asking myself, is my life real if no one sees it? It was then that I discovered the importance of becoming the witness to my own life. This was not about ego or self-centeredness. It was about noticing, consciously and deliberately, the unfolding of my own existence. I started small. I would pause at the window and truly observe the patterns of sunlight across the garden, rather than glancing absent-mindedly. I would listen to the birds, the distant hum of traffic, the quiet creaks of my house, and name each sound in my mind, as though cataloging the evidence that life was happening, even if no one else was there to witness it. I began keeping a simple journal, not to impress anyone, but to capture my thoughts, my reflections, my small victories and challenges. Each entry reminded me that my experiences mattered simply because I had lived them. The most radical shift came when I began applying this awareness to my decisions. I noticed the subtle patterns in my moods, the impulses that shaped my choices, the moments when I felt joy or frustration. Instead of letting the days slip by unnoticed, I began consciously observing them. The simple act of naming a thought, acknowledging a feeling, or reflecting on a minor decision created a sense of presence that had been missing for years. When I started noticing my own life, it stopped feeling invisible. I realized one morning, as I watched the light spill across the floor and felt a quiet satisfaction in making my own small breakfast with care and attention. It was a revelation. Life is not unreal simply because others are absent. The act of observing, of being present for oneself, restores reality and meaning. This practice also opened the door to richer, more intentional experiences. I began approaching each day with questions. What did I notice that I had overlooked yesterday? How did I feel in that quiet moment alone? What small decisions could I make today that reflected the life I wanted to witness? It was like learning to see in color after years of gray. The ordinary became remarkable because I was fully attentive. Even mundane tasks, washing dishes, folding laundry, watering plants, transformed into rituals of presence. Each act became proof that I was alive, that I was participating in life in a meaningful way, independent of anyone else's approval. Becoming the witness to my own life also encouraged reflection on past choices without judgment. I could revisit old regrets, joys, and milestones and observe them with clarity, as if I were reading my own story unfold. This allowed me to reclaim experiences that I had dismissed as ordinary or unimportant, and in doing so, I gave my life a coherence and depth that I hadn't felt in decades. I want you to imagine, for a moment, what it would feel like to become a conscious observer of your own existence. To pause and notice the small details, the nuances, the fleeting emotions that shape your day. To give yourself permission to acknowledge your presence, your choices, and your experiences as valid, vibrant, and real. This is the essence of the second secret. Life regains its texture, its depth, and its meaning when you become present for it yourself. The invisible threads of your existence, once unnoticed, start to weave a pattern that is unmistakably yours. And the extraordinary thing is that this presence, this witnessing, does not require anyone else. It thrives entirely within you. By embracing this secret, I found a new kind of vitality. I no longer measured my days by external validation but by the clarity and fullness with which I experienced them. I learned to celebrate small moments of attention, to honor my own awareness, and to witness life with the care and curiosity it deserves. It became a practice, a mindset, and a lifeline that continues to shape every morning, every decision, and every quiet hour. In becoming the witness to my own life, I discovered that reality is never absent, It is only unnoticed until you give it your attention, and that attention transforms invisibility into presence, emptiness into richness, and solitude into a deeply lived experience. Secret 3. Solitude is a position, not a failure. For the longest time, I had equated being alone with being forgotten, overlooked, or abandoned. Solitude carried a shadowy weight, one that made each quiet evening feel like evidence of some personal failure. But gradually, I began to understand that solitude is not a punishment, it is a position. It is a place of freedom, of authority over your own time, and of quiet agency that no obligation or expectation can diminish. The decades I had spent fulfilling responsibilities, raising children, supporting partners, maintaining households, contributing to work and community, had instilled a pattern of constant presence. I was always visible, always engaged, always meeting someone else's needs. The sudden absence of those roles initially felt like a loss, but with reflection, I realized it was a gift in disguise. Solitude is not the absence of life, it is the presence of choice, and with choice comes autonomy. I began to experiment with this perspective. Instead of seeing an empty calendar as evidence of irrelevance, I started framing it as a space to design my own rhythm. Mornings became mine to savor, long cups of coffee, quiet stretches, walks with no agenda but observation. Afternoons could be devoted to reading, gardening, or crafting projects that had been postponed for decades. Evenings were opportunities to reflect, write, or simply sit in the presence of silence without guilt. Each moment spent intentionally reinforced the understanding that I wasn't left behind. I had stepped out of the noise, out of the constant demands and expectations that had defined my life for so long. And in stepping out, I discovered a profound sense of peace that had eluded me while I was perpetually available for others. This reframing shifted everything. Solitude became a statement of independence rather than an emblem of loss. I began noticing the subtle joys of being fully accountable to myself alone, deciding what mattered, when to act, and how to spend every hour. There was a lightness in it, a liberation I had never experienced while burdened by obligation. Simple decisions, what to eat, what to read, how to move through the day, became affirmations of my authority over my own life. It was empowering to recognize that solitude did not strip me of connection, it allowed me to redefine connection on my own terms, to choose engagements that were meaningful and intentional rather than expected or routine. Solitude also revealed layers of self-knowledge I had rarely accessed. In the absence of external noise, I could truly hear my own thoughts, preferences, and desires. I discovered patterns in my emotions, rhythms in my energy, and insights about what genuinely brought me joy. I noticed that the silence was not empty, it was fertile, a space to cultivate ideas, creativity, and clarity that had been obscured by years of constant doing for others. Each quiet moment became a dialogue with myself, a chance to witness and honor the person I had become, independent of past obligations or societal expectations. I want you to pause for a moment and consider your own experience of solitude. How do you see it? As a lack, a void, or a failure? Or can you start to see it as a position, a place of authority and freedom, a chance to curate your own life with intention and care? This reframing doesn't happen overnight. It is a practice, a mindset, and a gentle but persistent shift in perception. By viewing solitude as a choice rather than a deficit, the quiet hours transform from reminders of absence into celebrations of presence. Your presence, deliberate, acknowledged, and fully alive. In embracing this third secret, I began to approach life not as someone abandoned by the world, but as someone who had finally claimed the space and time that was always theirs to command. Solitude, I realized, is not a sign of being left behind. It is a position of clarity, freedom, and self-determined purpose. It is the opportunity to live with peace after decades of obligation, to relish independence, and to engage with the world from a grounded, deliberate place rather than from a reactive or dependent one. Stepping into solitude is not resignation, it is assertion. It is a declaration that your time, your attention, and your presence belong first and foremost to yourself, and from that position, everything else becomes richer, more intentional, and infinitely more fulfilling. By the time I reached 80, I could look back at those early years of quiet loneliness with a clarity I never expected. At 75, I felt invisible, untethered, and adrift in a world that no longer seemed to need me. I spent countless hours waiting for recognition, for roles, for someone else to step in and remind me that I mattered. But now, after confronting those uncomfortable truths and embracing the 3 secrets that reshaped my perspective, I've realized something remarkable. I am no longer invisible, not because anyone restored my place, but because I anchored myself. I moved from waiting for external validation to cultivating internal presence. I stopped leaning on others to define my worth and instead became the observer, the witness, and the steward of my own life. I took responsibility for my significance, noticed the small, precious details of my daily existence, and reframed solitude as freedom rather than absence. These shifts didn't erase the quiet moments of loneliness. They transformed them into opportunities to inhabit my own world fully, deliberately, and with peace. Now, I want to invite you to take part in this community and help spread this message to others who may be struggling with similar feelings. One of the simplest, yet most powerful ways you can do that is by using the hype button on YouTube. Hyping this video isn't just a click, it's a way to elevate voices like ours, seniors over 60, so that stories of growth, resilience, and self-discovery reach more people who need to hear them. Here's how it works. Scroll down on the YouTube app and swipe left on the comment preview carousel until you see the hype button. Tap hype, select how many points you want to give, confirm, and you're done. Remember, you get 3 free hypes every week, and each one pushes this video higher so more seniors can find it, learn from it, and feel less alone. Hyping often even earns you a Hype Star badge, showing that you're a top supporter helping to grow this community. While you're at it, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss new stories and tips designed especially for seniors navigating this stage of life. Every click, every share, every comment matters, not just for the channel, but for everyone seeking connection, insight, and reassurance that they are seen. By sharing this video with friends, family, or anyone you know who might feel adrift, you help create a ripple effect of awareness, understanding, and empowerment. Your engagement is part of a larger movement that reminds us all that aging doesn't mean fading away. It means growing in ways that are intentional, meaningful, and fully our own. As you step back from this video, I want you to carry this thought with you. Loneliness didn't leave my life. It just stopped being the one in charge. The quiet moments, the empty spaces, the still hours, they haven't disappeared. But they no longer dictate my sense of self. I am grounded, present, and fully in command of my life. And you can be too. Every conscious choice you make, every moment you spend noticing, every act of self-responsibility strengthens that foundation. So go ahead, engage, share, and participate. Hyping this video, liking, subscribing, and reflecting on your own journey are not just small actions. They are powerful steps toward reclaiming presence, purpose, and peace. Together, we can create a community where seniors feel seen, valued, and empowered to thrive, no matter what life stage they are in. Loneliness may linger at times, but it no longer holds the reins. We do.